So you want to be a director? Well done. It's an exciting step in your career. But more importantly, it's an opportunity to make a greater contribution, to leverage your input. I'm Richard Winfield, and I'm committing to helping boards improve their performance. In particular, I help new directors become more confident, more effective, more quickly. Congratulations! Joining a board of directors is a great honour. It enables you to make an enhanced contribution to the success of an organisation, but it also involves responsibilities and risks. Directors are involved in an organisation at a higher, more strategic level. You'll have a greater leverage and be able to make a greater contribution. If you and the company are a good fit and you've undertaken appropriate due diligence, then you will be set to start making your contribution with a mutual understanding of what is required of you, clarified relationships, and an appreciation of how the board operates. Appointment as a director can be a natural stage in your career development and an exceedingly rewarding activity. But before you accept an invitation to join a board, there are some things that you must do. Do you really want to become a director? Why become a director? Why do you want to become a director? This is a pretty fundamental question, but a good place to start. Indeed, why would anybody want to become a director? Directorships bring risk, responsibility, and no privileges. Companies need directors to constitute a board and to direct their operations. But why would anyone choose to become a director? Let's get one thing straight first. Becoming a director has no relation with owning shares. You can be a director without owning shares, and you can own shares without becoming a director. The next thing for you to understand is that limited liability applies to the company. It doesn't apply to the directors. It is important that you understand this and ensure that your board keeps proper records and follows proper processes and procedures. Although in most cases it will be the company that takes or doesn't take actions that put it at risk, there are certain circumstances when that risk can pass to the directors. It's important that you take steps to ensure that you are aware of such risks and protect yourself by properly considering the implications of decisions and by ensuring that proper minuted records are kept of both the board's considerations and their decisions. If you disagree with a decision, even if you're outvoted, you can still be liable for the results. So make sure that your objection is recorded. Your biggest risk is likely to be financial. The board must ensure that it can reasonably expect to be able to pay its creditors. You must be constantly vigilant about wrongful trading, overtrading, or trading fraudulently. It is an offence for a company to continue to trade while insolvent. Further, it's also an offence to enter into an agreement where doing so would result in the company becoming insolvent. If it does, then you can become personally liable for those debts incurred after the date that it became insolvent. Should a company get into financial difficulties, the board is expected to minimise creditors' losses and should take legal and/or financial advice on the best and most prudent courses of action. As a director, you should at all times be able to demonstrate that the board has been exercising reasonable care, skill and diligence, and that the directors have had regard to the likely consequences of any decision in the long term. You can also be liable if the company fails to implement proper processes covering health and safety, employment law, and control and disposal of hazardous waste. In the UK, you may also be liable for failure by the company to make required filings at Companies House. You can mitigate these risks by taking out professional indemnity insurance and learning to become a professional and effective director. Further, you should exercise your right to obtain professional advice, either from company officers or independent professionals. You can take on the liabilities of a director unknowingly by becoming what is known as a shadow director, if the directors of a limited company are accustomed to acting in accordance with your directions or instructions. However, if you are a professional advisor giving advice in your professional capacity, you are specifically excluded from the definition of a shadow director under UK company law. Make sure that you are clear about your status. The good news. I've deliberately put the bad news and the warnings right up front, because very often people choose to become directors for the wrong reasons and with a fair degree of naivety. After all, director has a certain kudos, and it looks good on your business card. It can also, of course, be financially rewarding. You should expect some compensation for your expertise, experience, and the additional risks that you take on. But serving on a board has never been more risky. Your reputation and even your personal assets could ultimately be at stake if you find yourself on the board of the wrong company. Before you agree to join a board, you must be satisfied that you know and understand the risks, issues, and commitments involved. If you're ready to find out how, let's move on to the first step in your due diligence. First, it is as well to be aware of the restrictions on you becoming a director. In the UK, you must be over 16 years old. You cannot also be the company's auditor. You must not be an undischarged bankrupt. You must not be disqualified from being a director by a court order. In addition, there might be relevant government regulations or restrictions in the company's Articles of Association that disqualify you from being a director of this particular company. Next, you should seriously consider the time commitment. Do you have enough time and energy to serve as a director? How often does the board meet? Would you be required, maybe later, to take on more responsibilities, such as joining a committee or working party? For you to be effective, you must be prepared to study board papers and find linkages and inconsistencies. You might need to follow up and clarify some of the information or do some external research as part of your preparation. In addition, you must be prepared to handle board emergencies, which come up at short notice and require intensive periods of full-time work and focus. As a guide, you should reckon on 3 to 5 hours for each meeting, and then allow 3 times that for preparation. For a director of a large company, that could amount to 300 hours per year. Skills. Here's a list of personal qualities that are important for directors. An effective and persuasive communicator whose contribution is concise, objective, and clear. Socially competent with a deft touch of humour. Independent of mind without prejudicing loyalty to colleagues and the board. A good listener who can focus on key issues and respond with sound advice. Democratic in balancing the interests of shareholders against the interests of others involved in the business. An achiever in his or her own particular chosen field. Constructive in expressing ideas as an individual when divorced from the structure and props of his or her own organisation. Particularly relevant for non-executive directors. Positive in making statements and proposals and unwilling to acquiesce in silence. Here's a list of job-related competencies to consider. Strategic expertise, the ability to review the strategy through constructive questioning and suggestion. Accounting and finance, the ability to read and comprehend the company's accounts, financial material presented to the board, financial reporting requirements, and some understanding of corporate finance. Financial and market awareness, the ability to recognize warning signs that might indicate a change in the overall health of the organization. Legal, the board's responsibility involves overseeing compliance with numerous laws, as well as understanding an individual director's legal duties and responsibilities. Managing risk. Experience in managing areas of major risk to the organisation. Managing people and achieving change. Experience with financial markets. And industry knowledge. Experience in similar organisations or industries. You won't need to have all these yourself, but it is useful to identify your strengths. If there are any essential skills that you need, then either you should take steps to study them for yourself or attend a course, or you can negotiate coaching or training as part of your induction. So, do culture and relationships fit? Company culture. Organizations can have a wide range of cultures, their unspoken norms of behavior, that are critical to a company's success. Some see themselves as competitive, with a sporting analogy. Some are more military in their approach. Others are creative or cutting edge. Some are nurturing a new entity or are stewards for a legacy. The culture and your potential contribution are likely to be different according to whether this is a young or mature company, whether it's growing or in distress, whether it is private or public, or preparing for a flotation, merger, or acquisition. Organization culture is a powerful force and both reflects and shapes the way an organization operates. It's part of why people work there, and even why people do business with it. Board culture. Creating business value is the job of the board, in which no one holds individual formal power. That's very different from the hierarchy of corporate management, and you should consider how you will prepare yourself for this. One of the most important subjects to consider before joining the board is the judgment, experience, and temperament of the board and senior management, and whether you will enjoy working with them. Speaking with directors or management on a one-on-one basis will help you appreciate this. Also, you could ask any directors or senior management who have recently left the company. If so, what were the circumstances of those departures? Do they reveal anything about the dynamic between the board and management? Starting at a basic level, you will need an insight into the experience and background of the directors and senior management. Does the CEO encourage open and collaborative environments between the board and management? Is the CEO committed to listening to the board's input? And can directors interact with senior management without the presence of the chief executive? Before deciding to join a particular board, you should carry out your own exercise of due diligence. If you're not comfortable with an organization's culture, you're unlikely to give of your best or want to stay for a full term. It's worth committing significant time and resources to finding out everything you can before taking up a position. You can start with your conversation with the chairman and by meeting as many of the current directors as possible. You should also ask for and read the last 2 years' worth of board minutes. These will give you an excellent insight into both the culture and the processes. Here are some of the questions you should ask yourself. What are the other directors like? Do you share their values and aspirations for the company? How capable and committed are they? Do they appear qualified for their roles? Who are the current chief executive and non-executive directors? What is their background and record, and how long have they served on the board? Are they people of integrity, willing to ask difficult questions? And are they there to make a contribution, or to flatter their egos? How do they operate as a board? Do a few dominant directors commandeer the meeting? Are there factions? Does superficial knowledge go unchallenged? Is the chemistry collaborative? What is the size and structure of the board and board committees? And what are the relationships between the chairman and the board, the chief executive, and the management team? Are there directors who dominate board deliberations, or who discourage meaningful discussion or dissent? Are there directors who serve as an effective counterbalance to management? Does the board have good processes? Are discussions relevant, rigorous, and penetrating? Is the board equipped to handle corporate life-threatening issues? Do directors think, question, and challenge? Or are board meetings ritualistic, with tick-box governance, inadequate understanding, and a focus on short-term and internal issues? How do they deal with challenge, risk, and conflict? Do they demonstrate curiosity to question and the courage to challenge? Are they alert to risks and the reality of what is happening around them? Do they think for themselves? When you've answered these, you will be in a position to decide whether you have a good fit with the board, directors, and management, and whether you will be able to add real value. Corporate governance is about what the board of a company does and how it sets the values of the company. It is to be distinguished from the day-to-day operational management of the company by full-time executives. Good governance is not just about compliance with formal rules and regulations. It is about establishing internal processes and attitudes that add value, enhance the reputation of the business, make it more attractive to external investors and lenders, and ensures long-term success. Poor corporate governance weakens the company's potential and at worst can pave the way for financial difficulties and even fraud. So what is this board's approach? When considering whether to join a board, you should determine whether it takes a positive approach to its fiduciary and compliance duties and has formal structures that ensure that key issues are addressed in advance. Or is it a passive board that approaches governance as a box-ticking exercise? Good governance requires that the performance of the board be evaluated once a year. Well-conducted evaluations help the board, committees, and individual directors perform to their maximum capabilities. So a good start would be to ask what steps the board takes to evaluate its performance and that of its committees and individual directors. Here are some questions you should ask yourself. Is the company committed to compliance? What record does the company have on corporate governance issues? Does the company have sound and effective systems of internal controls? What are the processes for setting the agenda, board meetings and minutes? How does the board address decision-making, strategy and monitoring of performance? How does the board differentiate between board responsibilities and management roles? Does the board have an effective committee structure? Does the board have a formal process for dealing with complaints and whistleblowers? Does the board have off-site residential retreats or away days? Who owns the company? Who are the main shareholders? And how has the profile changed over recent years? What is the company's attitude towards and relationship with its shareholders? Answering these questions will enable you to decide how well organised and structured the board is, whether the directors aspire to best practice, and whether it is aligned with your values. You don't need to be an expert in accounting, but you must be satisfied that any board you join has the necessary expertise, both on the board and available to you. You also need to check that it has robust processes in place and that information is monitored and reported on a regular basis. Before joining a board, you should check out its financial health. What is the company's current financial position, and what has its financial track record been over the last 3 years? What are the exact nature and extent of the company's business activities? What is the company's competitive position and market share in its main business areas? What are the key dependencies, for example, regulatory approvals, key licenses and such like? Does it have sufficient reserves? Is its projected cash flow adequate? How does cash flow vary through its business cycle or through the month? How does the board monitor financial performance against budget? What checks and balances are in place to detect errors, fraud and abuse? Are any specific expense areas rising faster than sources of income? As a director, you will potentially be at risk if things go wrong. Are you satisfied that this company is soundly financed, has adequate systems and a responsible approach? Successful business involves taking risks. All members of a board should have a feeling for the main business risks, and there should be ways of monitoring the development of these risks. Boards should have nominated directors with risk expertise, and every company should approve the risk appetite framework, including internal control reporting and independent coordinated assurance over controls that mitigate each risk and their interactions. Risk assessment and control should not be limited to financial risks, but it should also take account of an increasing range of factors such as employment litigation, loss of key individuals, succession planning, IT failure or data loss, reputation risk, etc. Rapid technology advancement has created further opportunity and risk. Cybersecurity, employees using their own computers and mobile devices, and social media are just 3 IT risks that now need internal controls to avoid privacy breaches, reputational damage, and significant investor loss. Similar risks apply for corporate manslaughter and potentially for environmental damage. You must be satisfied that the board has implemented and monitors appropriate processes to protect employees, the public, and the environment from harm. In many countries, there is additional risk from accusations of bribery, either institutional or by a rogue employee. Regulators are now able to hold boards responsible for fraud, bribery, and other forms of corruption at deep level, within and even interacting outside the organisation. They are imposing onerous risk coverage requirements on directors that require oversight of internal controls, risk takers, and limitations. In smaller companies, directors are sometimes asked to guarantee loans to the company. Make sure you're aware of any such obligations, as you would be put at risk if the loan conditions are not fulfilled. Before joining a board, you should ensure that you understand the type and level of risk, and that it fits your own risk profile. A good start would be to ask to see the company's risk register. Check not only what is in it, but judge how comprehensive it is and ask how regularly it is reviewed. Does the board commission independent reviews of the board, risks and internal controls to provide it with advance warning on precisely where their vulnerabilities and weaknesses are? Has the company implemented confidential whistleblowing and amnesty procedures and audits of internal controls over culture and reputation? Is there anything about the company's business activities that would cause you concern in terms of risk and any personal ethical considerations? Is any material litigation, investigation or other claim presently being undertaken or threatened either by the company or against it? Are you satisfied that the internal regulation of the company is sound and that you would be able to operate within its governance framework? What insurance cover is available to directors? And what is the company's policy on indemnifying directors? Before becoming a director, you should ensure that the company has obtained appropriate directors' indemnity insurance, or be prepared to obtain your own. You should also have the right to professional advice from within the company, or externally should you request it. Should you at any stage conclude that the company is behaving inappropriately, you might feel tempted to resign. However, this does not necessarily free you from your obligation and liabilities. So do your due diligence first. Remember, once appointed, you will be liable for the board's decisions from the day that you join, even if you miss a meeting. In a company, you may have several roles as well as acting as a director. You might also own shares, lend the company money and guarantee loans, be a supplier or customer, or other significant stakeholder. Conflicts of interest bring a further level of risk. If you become a director of more than one company, you should pay particular attention to the potential for conflicts of interest. You mustn't divert business opportunities to yourself or to others that ought to be available to the whole company. Nor should you benefit from a third party by reason of you being a director, or by doing or not doing something. You must be extremely careful if you want to take advantage of an opportunity for private profit in an area of activity similar to that of the company, even if the company has rejected the particular proposition. If you profit personally from your position, even if the company itself hasn't suffered because of your action, a court can order you to pass any profits made to the company. Does this company have a meaningful mission? If you are to remain motivated, it is important to have a good reason for joining any particular board. Would working for this company be worthwhile in its own right, Or are you attracted by challenges it is facing, or perhaps by the status associated with being on its board? Although the primary task for all boards is to establish corporate direction, this is often the area in which boards find it most difficult to spend sufficient time, and about which directors most frequently report the inadequacy of their knowledge. A purpose you can relate to, combined with a good cultural fit, would be a good indicator that this is a project you can commit to, potentially for 6 years. A shared understanding of a company's purpose and long-term vision is important because it provides the context for strategy and decision-making. Here are some factors to consider. Does this company have a defined vision, mission, and value statement? Does it give a sense of the future, guide decision-making and strategy, create a shared purpose, provide guidelines that determine behaviour, inspire emotion, and connect to values? Are the annual report and corporate strategy consistent with the organisation's defined purpose? Does the board hold regular off-site retreats or away days to review its purpose and consider strategy? Are its plans consistent with the corporate strategy? Are plans compatible across different business units, such that individual and combined plans are achievable within the resources available and the forecast revenues and costs? Plans are consistent with and potentially responsive to changes in market, economy, and regulatory environments. Plans are consistent with legal and ethical requirements, and plans are supported by the management. If you identify with the company's purpose, then it's worth exploring exactly what your role will be. Why have you been invited to join the board? If you're an executive director, your role and status will probably be connected to your role as head of department or functional expert. Nevertheless, you should discuss with the chairman exactly what he or she expects of you. If you are an external appointment to a non-executive role, there are more issues for you to clarify. Here are some reasons why you might have been approached. To provide instant management or functional experience. To add prestige or respectability to the board. To bring experience of proposed activities such as a flotation, merger or takeover. To strengthen defences against possible takeover approaches or shareholder activity. To bring influence and access to your network of contacts. As a potential successor to the chairman. To support the chairman's power base. To represent a dominant shareholder. Or as part of a board shake-up following new ownership, new chairman, or internal upheaval. To replace a retiring director. To create a better balance of experience, respond to changing business environment. To rejuvenate a tired or aging board. Or to support diversity policies. Discussing these with the chairman will not only clarify what is expected of you, but it might also enable you to highlight additional talents. Alternatively, it might identify some warning signals. When you're offered your first directorship, it's probably because you've been successful as an executive. It's important to recognise that directorship and management are totally different types of role. If you are appointed from within, you will need to establish your new identity and build new relationships. It's better if this is managed rather than gradually evolving. If you are appointed from outside, a non-executive directorship is an important stage of many successful people's career development. There are additional issues associated with relationship building and access to information. You must ensure there will be a formal induction process with a similar structure to the induction for any new role, but with particular attention paid to managing the change in relationships. Induction and the first 3 months. The objective of induction is to provide you with the information you will need to become as effective as possible in your role within the shortest practical time. Induction should include building an understanding of the nature of the company, its business, and the markets in which it operates. Building a link with the company's people. Building an understanding of the company's main relationships. All directors should receive induction on joining a board to obtain appropriate knowledge of the company and gain access to its operations and staff. The company secretary is responsible for ensuring that you receive a full, formal and tailored induction on joining the board, under the direction of the chairman. Set aside enough time. The UK Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators recommends that you should expect to make yourself available for an additional 10 days for the induction process. One option you could suggest is partnering with an existing non-executive director or with a particular executive director to hasten an understanding of a particular part of the business. You should endeavour to meet major shareholders. If you are likely to be joining a committee, you should see copies of committee minutes from the preceding 12 months. Here's a checklist of information you should expect to obtain as part of your induction. Board and committee structure and terms of reference. Biographical and contact details of all directors of the company secretary and other key executives. Board meetings, recent minutes, dates, procedures, and training in the use of systems and technology. Boardroom behaviours, culture and values, codes of conduct and ethics. Articles of Association and the Constitution. Board procedures and confidentiality. Board appraisal and development programme. Current issues. The nature of the company, its business and its markets. Meetings with senior management, visits to company sites, details of employee committees or surveys. Information about main stakeholders. In addition, you should expect a personal meeting with the chairman in which you can explore exactly what he or she expects of you and why you were chosen. You should ask for a formal job description in your role as director, drawing attention to your duties under company law and specifying particular tasks and responsibilities required of you. Now that you have performed your due diligence, it's time to put it all together and to decide whether this role is right for you at this time. If this is the first time you've been offered a directorship, think carefully. Will accepting it cause you to miss out on better opportunities in the future? Or will the experience of this role enhance your credibility and boost your career potential? Directorships are normally for 3 years, with the expectation of renewal for another 3 years. 6 years is a significant commitment. Think about it carefully. What contribution can you make, and how would taking it up challenge and support you in progressing your career? Are you prepared to put in the additional time and effort collecting and analysing information, networking and promoting the organisation to stakeholders? Could there be conflicts of interest? Will you rapidly become an advocate? If this is right for you, then go for it. But if in doubt, think carefully. Accepting the responsibilities of a director should not be taken lightly. Be prepared to decline the invitation. Let me repeat, be prepared to decline the invitation. But explain your reasons. There might be other opportunities better suited to you. Most directors are well connected. They may be able to introduce you to openings in the future if they know what you want. If your decision is yes, then commit wholeheartedly to the induction program. Arrange meetings with new colleagues and prepare for your next board meeting. Prepare well. Ask for help before the meeting. Clarify anything you don't understand with the company secretary, the chairman, or the report's author. Be prepared to ask naive questions and to challenge. Take advantage of your temporary status as a newcomer and establish your reputation as one who takes matters seriously. On a healthy board, the others will be keen to help you. In order to carry out the tasks described above, you will need to obtain a wide range of information, and you will need to continue doing so throughout your career. As a director, you must ensure that you know what is going on and have adequate knowledge to make a contribution to board-level discussions, consistent with your own levels of expertise. Shareholders and courts are not sympathetic to directors, both executive and non-executive, who've not known enough about company matters. Outside directors and the chairman should have access to the same information and information systems as the executive directors. However, you should also have recourse to many sources of information in addition to board papers. Your knowledge and awareness can be developed from a wide range of sources. It's your responsibility to develop sensitivity and awareness to sources and subjects. For a start, review the newspapers and magazines you read, the radio and television programs and internet sites that can not only bring you news and ideas, but also stimulate your thinking. Perhaps for the first time, media outside your professional specialism will become more important. Formal and official information sources you can consult. Regular board papers. Results by division and company, monthly and annual accounts, funds flow statement, order book data, project status, etc. Reports given in meetings, official correspondence, ad hoc reports and presentations, including special studies, consultants' reports, proposals for investment and acquisitions. Economic reports, including market reports and research studies. Informal and unofficial sources. Visits and presentations, questioning in meetings, contacts within the company, including face-to-face talks, telephone, email, off-the-record comments, grapevine discussion, casual reading, radio and television, Internet, Google, YouTube, etc., contacts inside the company, conferences and networking events, unofficial probing and questions, company report and accounts and/or any listing prospectus for recent years, analysts' reports, press reports, company website, any corporate social responsibility or environmental report issued by the company, rating agency reports, voting services reports.